Um, the Web App Security Assessment tool will help you in finding the specific code level changes that need to be made, but the static source code analysis tool will point directly to those changes. One thing that might be useful is as you're scoping out the vendor solution for you is figure out some way or talk to the vendors that you're discussing for a code analysis piece. How can you actually have the code analysis piece talk to your bug tracking system? I mean, if you're finding vulnerabilities and you have this disjointed workflow after you actually find the problems, that doesn't help you so much because you're basically adding more work to the whole process. So all I'm saying is that the evaluation of the tool is incredibly important, but don't think about it in terms of what works for you right now. Make sure you address how this is going to work into your workflow. How is it going to work into your development process down the road? I didn't know there were so many web application firewall vendors until I started looking at this, but there's a heck of a lot out there. I think what this does is it kind of advertises the importance that web application security is actually getting now. We have Breach offering WebDefend, Mod Security, which is open source. Support's offered by Breach. And I believe they even have some appliances now. You'll need to talk to the Breach people more about that downstairs. Imperva has SecureSphere. F5 and Citrix both have web app firewall components as modules on the load balancer. If you're an F5 or Citrix shop, maybe that makes sense for you. Barracuda has a web application controller. I believe they're based out of Canada. We have Denial, Beware, Binary Sec. If I'm not mistaken, these are European companies, and so much more known in the European market. And Cisco, I believe, purchased a company, and they have Cisco Ace. Fortify does have what they call real-time analysis. I think it was formerly called Fortify Defender. So it's not really a web app firewall, it's kind of a hybrid, but it may be something that you want to talk to Fortify about if it makes sense for you as well. Again, on the CapEx piece, you'll see 30 days to evaluate, 4 to 8 weeks to deploy. The web application firewall you can expect to require some ongoing fine tuning. So it's something that you're going to devote a lot of time to. If you're the one managing it, then you're going to be devoting a lot of time to fine tuning it. It's going to reveal a lot of vulnerabilities. It's going to reveal a lot of visibility into the web application traffic. So it's going to be hugely important to you. But there's going to be a lot of gotchas. We have an expression where I'm at now. We call it an HSM, which is a holy shit moment. So you want to avoid these holy shit moments, but they're definitely going to happen. So web application firewall is going to actually help you get visibility into the web application traffic, so you can be better versed for those. The CapEx for the web app firewall. It's pretty much a function of how many data centers you have, whether you want to go out of line initially, whether you want redundancy right away. What I've typically found is it's really hard to deploy in line right away. The network guys are a little squeamish about putting another variable in front of everything, so you may find that going out of line initially makes the most sense for you. It'll allow you more time to build a business case for the web app firewall as well. So initial budget maybe 75 to 100K, but it depends on how many data centers that you have. If you've got data centers in Europe or other parts of the country or multiple in the States, then you need to make sure that you have exposure into each one of those data centers that's feeding the web app, so that could actually add to the cost. But I think it definitely does make sense to deploy out of line unless your confidence with a tool is high enough at another location. So, oh yeah, and this one bit me. So make sure that if you're deploying your web app firewall in a colo or a headless environment, that you start thinking about some kind of a remote console, because if you're using the management interface in a colo environment and you fat finger a change in the configuration or you do something, then it's going to ruin your day, because then you're not going to have access to it. So this is basic networking stuff, but I wanted to remind you anyway that make sure if you have a KVM or any kind of remote KVM or a Digi or a console, a serial console server, that you ask the operations guys before you deploy So you address that as well. Figure out how you're going to have to plug the web app firewall into your remote management architecture. WAFrefuse.com. That's a site that when I was doing the bake-off, I was frustrated that there weren't any. There wasn't a lot of publicly available objective information. Typically, you'll sign an NDA with the WAF vendors when you come in and do a bake-off. So there's some reticence afterwards to kind of talk about any details of your bake-off. But I started this site mostly out of frustration. If you go to WAFreviews.com, it'll basically just do a DNS redirect over to a Google app that I put together. And what I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to solicit anyone that has any feedback. If you have a bake-off, just email to submit at WAFreviews.com. And I'll post it there. If you sanitize it, that's fine, or just email it in a way that you want to share, because I'm basically trying to offer a venue or a community-based site where we can all go and learn more about some of the pros and cons about WAF reviews. It's been up now for a couple months, and the silence has been kind of deafening. So if you guys really want to participate and share what you find during your WAF review process, by all means, please use this site. Okay, we're still on the foundation piece, but now we're detecting the compromise attempts. I submit that deploying a web app firewall is going to be an excellent means for detecting compromise attempts. Okay, what is this web app firewall people keep talking about? Well, it's kind of a strange thing to describe, though. People get mostly confused about the word firewall and a web app firewall. It looks at web app or layer 7 in the OSI model, looks at web app layer 7 data, and it acts upon it. Okay, so that helps. Okay, it's similar to a layer 4 firewall, but you know, it's not really a firewall. Even though it's called a firewall, it's not really a firewall. I submit that it's more like a gateway in the sense that it acts on the data, not in a protocol translation of the way that a gateway typically does, but it acts on the gateway more than a traditional firewall. So whenever I think about this, you'll see in the listservs, people start, you know, there's religious battles about web app firewalls, and people say, well, it actually makes more sense as a gateway. And it's not really a gateway either. So what is it? Well, I like to call it a web application risk mitigation device, or a worm, because it's not really a firewall. It's more like a smoke screen or a worm. So I'm not sure if that'll stick, but hopefully that sticks. I wonder if I should trademark that. Anyway, so this is a diagram that I found. I can't remember where I found this, but it's helped me explain at a high level where a web app firewall fits into your architecture. Basically, if you'll see the internet cloud there and a traditional network firewall and your web server, think of the web app firewall basically sitting between your typical perimeter security and where the web server is. At a high level, that's kind of where you need to be thinking about it. It gets a little more complicated than that, but that's basically at a high level. This is an awesome graphic. I don't remember where I found this, but it must have been a long time ago. I've used this a number of times to help express and communicate that traditional network security is not concerned about layer 7. You may offer, I've heard the argument that, okay, well, why do we need a web app firewall when we have Snort? Snort's great for commercial off-the-shelf tools and known daemons, commercial daemons. What we're talking about here is web application, custom web application code. You're going to have a web application that's only yours, and it's not going to be, there's going to be code that's only in your web application.